Magic Johnson, the great Magic Johnson, one of the great basketball players of all time, and certainly the most influential basketball player probably in the history of Los Angeles. And that's saying something, by the way. There's been a lot of great athletes. His business, his outreach all over the town. He's everywhere in Los Angeles. Now part owner of a baseball team, the Dodgers. But he said yesterday on another show on another network that LeBron has 1 year left, and then it's Kevin Durant's league after that. And I thought it was an interesting statement. And I thought, all right, let's go back. Speaking of Magic, let's go back 40 years. It's 2021. Let's go back to 1981. 40. Most of you were not watching the NBA in the 70s. I was kind of, but that's kind of when the league felt like it got big. David Stern, stars. The 70s didn't really have a face in the league. I mean, it really didn't. There was a bunch of different champions. I mean, Dr. J kind of. So let's go to 1981. And let's look at who has been the face of the league. So in 1981 to 83, Magic had a title with Kareem. Magic really helped the rebirth of the NBA. David Stern, the new commissioner's like, let's promote the players. Magic was the face of the NBA. It was his league. Larry Bird also came in about the same time, and then Larry Bird wrestled it away from him for about a 3-year period, mid-'80s, where Larry was winning MVPs. Celtics were giving the Lakers a hard time. Magic wrestled it back from him at the end of the 80s to close out the decade. Magic now, the hook shot and winning championships and MVPs. So the 80s was Magic and Larry's league. There's no dispute. As good as Isaiah Thomas can be, it was Magic and Larry's league. They were the most marketable. One was East Coast, one was West. One was a Celtic, one was a Laker. It was really a great time. I remember it well. It really felt like in sports, I look back and I think that's the beginning of the NBA for most people watching our show. That really feels like the beginning for most people under 60 watching the show. So it was Magic and Bird. Then we go to the 90s. Well, you know what happened there. It was Michael Jordan's league. From about 90 to 98, even when Michael briefly left for about a year and a half, it's still Michael's league. Only people winning it because Michael wasn't there. It was Michael's league. And then for about a 7-8 year period, like 99 to 2007, when centers mattered, it went Duncan, Shaq, Duncan. That was Tim Duncan came out of college and was completely polished his first day in the league. And Shaq was the big personality. They were opposite human beings, right? One the big personality, one very reticent, but they were the faces of the league. And then for a brief time, the great late Kobe Bryant, for about a 2-3 year period, 2008, 2010, went to finals, won a couple of them with Pau Gasol. He was the face of the league. From that until today, it's been LeBron's league. 10 years with a tip of the cap to Steph Curry, who in the later years kind of tried to wedge in there, but it's LeBron's league. So I want you to think about that first of all. 40 years, 7 people. 5 of the 7 are very engaging personalities. Magic and Michael was glamorous, and Shaq and Kobe and LeBron and style and personality and the great smile, and they embraced it. Bird, feisty and combative. Duncan, reluctant. So it does prove, like Kevin Durant's personality, he's a little combative and feisty. So is Bird. You could do that. He can be sometimes withdrawn. So is Duncan. You can be face of the league. But it's harder. It is harder. Market size, again, is not everything. Duncan was the face of the league in San Antonio. So now let's get to Kevin Durant. Could he be the face of the league? Well, it's interesting. In his 3 stops, I'd argue he's never been the face of the team. In Oklahoma City, what was his frustration? Management sided with Westbrook. As wrong as they were, and they were really wrong, Kevin got frustrated with the coach and the GM who wouldn't confront Westbrook, who was very difficult to play with. Kevin was called at one point Mr. Unreliable. Westbrook was more popular. Then he goes to Golden State, and he was their best player. Finals MVP. But the culture was created by Steph. Steph is the Bay Area. It was Steph's team. And then he goes to Brooklyn. Okay, it's his team. Well, not really. The last 2 weeks, it's been his team. But in the regular season, the hottest the Nets got was when KD got hurt and Harden took over, And weren't we on this show saying, man, Harden really is a valuable player? He really is. I came on and said, I always saw him as a scorer. James Harden's actually really valuable. He's a really good distributor. He's trying on defense. It's hard to be the face of the league when 3 different times you haven't necessarily been the face of your team. And we do this all the time. We confuse brilliantly talented with the face of something or the culture setter. No, Kevin Durant is the most effortless, brilliantly gifted scorer in basketball. And I would argue that's probably been the last 8 years. Maybe I'm wrong on the timeline. Maybe it's 10, maybe it's 7, maybe it's 6. But he's a little withdrawn. He's a little combative. He's a little feisty. And I'm not really sure he really wants to be that. Kevin Durant this year and next, as long as he's healthy, will be the most gifted scorer in basketball. But don't confuse that with being the face of something, the most important something. I don't think right now the NBA necessarily needs a face of the league. I think they're getting closer to the NFL. I think what's ironic here is the NFL was always very corporate. Actually, it's borrowing some NBA stuff. Let's let our guys celebrate. Guys are getting shoe deals. Star quarterbacks have an opinion. And the NBA, I think, looking at the NFL, is trying to borrow some of their strengths. Why can't we just have good stories, good teams, fun people to root for, big market, small market, it doesn't matter. And actually today, I would watch a Phoenix Suns Milwaukee Bucks final. And I think it would be fascinating. And I didn't think that for a lot of years when smaller markets got in. I don't think the NBA needs a face. I think they've been too beholden to that through the years. Remember, when Magic and Bird took over, the league was a little bit of a mess. It had come out of the 70s. Many teams were bordering on bankrupt. It had a little bit, reportedly, there were some drug concerns in the league. It didn't have a face. The Lakers were the best franchise. Not a lot of teams were making money. It wasn't well run. In the 70s, playoff games, I'm not joking, were on tape delay after the 11 o'clock news. I wish I was joking. I think the NBA actually, despite its critics, is moving into an interesting time where there's so much global talent. There are so many gifted players. You're not beholden to one guy. I got to be honest. I love watching Zion, and then I watch Trae Young and John Morant, Devin Booker, and I can't take my eyes off them. How about the NBA borrows a little from the NFL? They don't need one team and one guy. Because I've watched the NFL over the last several years, and it's helped them borrow a little from the NBA. You're noticing that, right? The NFL watched the NBA and said, damn, they're good on social media. Man, the talk shows talk a lot about him. Skip, and Stephen A, and everybody all talking NBA, and the ratings aren't that huge. Why? Because the NBA is star-driven, and they let their players celebrate and have fun in social media, and the NFL looks at that and goes, we can use a little bit of that. I kind of like that. And they have. And the NBA looks at the NFL and thinks, Kansas City wins a Super Bowl. Tampa wins a Super Bowl. It doesn't even matter who wins a Super Bowl. It's just a bunch of good stories, good teams. Feels like some competitive balance. And this year, we've got the Clippers better than the Lakers. The Phoenix Suns probably better than all of them. And the Milwaukee Bucks ready to take on the Atlanta Hawks. And every night I'm watching. They don't need a face. They did in the 70s. They did in the 80s. They did in the 90s. They did when Jordan left. They don't now, in my opinion. Hi, everybody. Thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get the latest from the show. Also, be sure to check out more of the best clips from The Herd or go watch a few segments from other shows on FS1.